Hey, Steve.
Gentlemen, I hope you can hear me. How are you tonight?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. How are you?
Fantastic.
Welcome.
You know, I had never been to Mercedes-Benz Stadium prior to this season, and this is my 4th trip already this weekend. So I'm starting to get the hang of this Georgia thing, and I'm looking
You're local. We're glad you're here. You know, it's this new Apple deal has brought us a ton of new faces, right? And it's nice to, some of you guys are like regulars now. Some of y'all are still making your first appearances, but it's good that you kind of know your way around.
I think it has been a wonderful thing, and I get what people miss too. I mean, I've said this a couple of times this year. In Atlanta, I know the great affinity that your fan base had for Kevin and Mo and Jillian, who did a terrific broadcast down there. And all 3 are friends of mine, and I'm proud to call them coworkers now in this whole Apple project. But I just look at big picture of how we've presented the game so far this year, guys. And, you know, the attention to detail in terms of picture quality and the studio show. And if you could tolerate people like me for 90 minutes, I think the whole thing is a 5-star Boffo success.
Well, before this, you were with the Red Bulls for a number of years. So from calling games locally to calling them on a national basis, I know you had some time with ESPN as well. So I guess what's been the biggest adjustment from that local broadcasting angle to now national and global even?
Well, I was part of the Red Bulls or Metro Stars broadcast, if you go way back. I mean, I'm one of the more longer tenured guys in the league, so I don't mind telling people how old I am and how long I've been around. So the thing you lose, right, and this is obvious, you're smart guys and you do a good show, you lose that intimacy every week, the one-to-one relationship that you have with coaches. Jesse Marsh, I would be in his office the Friday before every game, and there was a trust factor there. So you're building that now each and every week with different coaches who do not see you every week. There have been a few teams that we've done more often than others. I think Gonzalo Pineda, again, this will be the 4th time that I have a nice long chat with him when we get him on the phone. Danny Higginbotham is my regular partner. And, you know, we've kind of worked at this very delicately, building the trust of the coaches and the players who might not be as intimately familiar with our work. So that's a process. That's not a hill that's going to be climbed in the first few months of this, but I think we are making great progress at doing that. And I think the biggest difference is we are at the venues. I can't speak for every broadcast in the league, but even in New York at MSG, we stopped traveling for road games for the last few years that Madison Square Garden Network had the contract with the New York Red Bulls. You lose a lot when you're calling the game off the monitor. You lose a lot of the obvious, and you lose some of the subtle things that I think only people in sports television might understand. So being at the venue every week, I can't tell you what that's done for us to have the ability to give you a more accurate and I think energized broadcast every week. And I hope we plan on bringing that for a long, long time with this group.
I think you're off to a good start so far. I think everything with Apple has been great. I think the only thing we've talked about is maybe the schedule's a little hard to be able to watch a lot of MLS. I think that's been our only real complaint. But everything else, I mean, the value of the broadcast and, you know, having the options, right? Like if you want to listen to your home announcers, you can listen to the home announcers, even just learning that and hearing different voices. Like I'll even sometimes start the first half. No offense, Steve, I might turn you off at halfway through to listen to what, you know, the other team would be their announcers, because it's good, because like I love hearing different voices. And when we heard you were coming on, I had to Google you. I've got my NHL jersey on. It's the NHL draft today. I realized that you did the New Jersey Devils. So I looked in and listened to some clips of you, and I thought you sounded a little bit familiar when I heard the name. I knew it somewhere. So
yeah, I had a nice 16-year run as part of the Devils broadcast, the last 11 as the primary play-by-play man when Mike Emmerich, the legendary Doc Emmerich, left to go to NBC at the time exclusively. Wow. So I had a lot going on in my life about a year ago, and I made a decision that I needed to dial a few things back, at least for the time being. So when Apple and MLS were nice enough to make me a pretty big offer in terms of number of games to call, I had to make some hard decisions. Was I still physically up to doing maybe 120 live events a year with all the travel that's mixed in? And if there are some other things going on family-wise that I need to pay attention to, yeah, I had to make a decision to leave it. And it's funny, I had left a message for the general manager of the New Jersey Devils, Tom Fitzgerald, and they went on a 16-game winning streak. I don't know if you guys know, very early last season. So I messaged him and said, pretty easy to figure out which piston wasn't firing, huh? You're having great success, and now that I'm gone. But I'm happy for all of them, and the team is in a very good place right now.
Great.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of fans will be looking forward to having you in the band on Sunday. I want to kind of pivot and kind of talk about Philly. I know you and Danny have called a few Philly matches this season. Danny, of course, was part of the television broadcasts with JP for several years for the Union. From what you've seen from the Union thus far, and they've been near top of the league, I feel like every year for the past few years. Close to MLS Cup, never have gotten quite there. Of course, last year MLS Cup final was one for the ages, probably one of the best of all time. What makes a team like Philly so good, and how can Atlanta cope with them on Sunday?
I'll tell you why this is a very dangerous game for Atlanta. Obviously, Philadelphia is a very good team. I think we're all in agreement on that. I think there are 4 teams right now that you could say are legitimate candidates to contend for MLS Cup in the Eastern Conference, right? I mean, obviously Cincinnati is at the top of that list. Between New England, Nashville, and Philadelphia, I think all 4 can see a path towards potentially contending for a championship outside of everybody else who's dreaming of the same thing. Maybe Atlanta is a team that does something during the window that has them entering that conversation. But I look at what happened in the last game, and I know this was their most disappointing game in a while, Atlanta, the 4-0 loss to the Red Bulls. But who did they lose to? That was a high-pressing team. Well, Philadelphia is a high-pressing team by definition. They do it a little bit differently because they employ a diamond. But the one thing that they are capable of, more so than the Red Bulls and most teams in MLS, they will make you pay when you turn the ball over. So this is a team already that scored, I believe, 34 goals to this point in the season. Atlanta's a team that I believe has already conceded 35, if I have my numbers correct.
Yep.
So what does that mean? I think this adds up to a situation on Sunday afternoon where people like Purata and Abram, I understand he was healthy enough to practice today, so I'm assuming that'll be the center back pairing again. I think this is an afternoon where they have to have one of the most responsible games that they can play. And whatever constructs their midfield, whoever's at the 6 for them, if it's one person or more, they also need to play an exceptional game. Because right now, Philadelphia's got it going on all cylinders. Daniel Gazdag is a terrific player. The attacking trio with Ua and Carranza is fantastic. But guys, more than that, they're getting production now from people they're not accustomed to getting production from. Jose Martinez is scoring. Leon Flock found the score sheet. So it's coming together for them now. And it's understandable to me why it took so long. They were navigating CONCACAF Champions League. There was a crunch in the schedule. But I think now also there's some clarity that Jim Curtin's probably going to remain as this team's head coach. And now I think they're ready to take one more big swing at what just eluded them in the game that you're referring to back in November. They were seconds away from winning it all, and Elliott was seconds away from being an MLS Cup MVP before Gareth Bale and John McCarthy had other ideas.
Yep. I feel like you watched our episode that we did yesterday. We had a little bit of a conversation about exactly that. Philly, the way they play, it's not that different than what they just faced up in New Jersey. And you've got a team that does it much better, actually, in terms of their clinicality, and they can finish. They don't miss opportunities often, and like you said, they're going to make you pay. And I feel like making you pay is like the worst thing an Atlanta United fan can hear, because the mistakes are killing them this year.
Well, there was an inattentiveness, I thought, in the Red Bulls game that I had not seen from Atlanta to this degree. 4 goals is something conceded that they want to forget about, but to concede one on a throw-in, which was the first goal of the game, and I know this was a nice finish by the kid Daniel Edelman for the Red Bulls, who fired off a nice shot and beat Brad Guzan. That disturbs me if I'm looking at it from an Atlanta perspective. The 4th goal that they surrendered in that game, the 2nd goal by Frankie Amaya that really put it away for the Red Bulls, it almost seemed like an unwillingness for Atlanta to defend in that situation. So I'm going to take a guess, an educated guess, that there's going to be a lot more attention to detail in situations like that by Pineda and his staff in the lead up to this game. But again, Philadelphia right now, they've got it going. They will come into this game on 8 days rest, as will Atlanta. I understand that. But usually when they've got their full complement of players, it shakes out well for them in a game against a team like Atlanta that wants to possess the ball. So the matchup, to me, kind of plays into Philadelphia's hands. The one big drop-off for Philadelphia, still no Andre Blake competing for Jamaica at the World Cup. Joe Bendick is a big step down from what Blake provides as a shot stopper, and of course his familiarity with that back four that they play.
You're giving me nightmares, Steve. I was I was already nervous about this game, and then everything you just said was like, I don't know if I should wake up Sunday and watch this game.
You've got the great equalizer here, though, in number 23 and number 7, though, don't you? The 2 great equalizers who I think are capable of taking over a game on any given afternoon. Look, Giakoumakis obviously got my vote as one of the 3 forward selections for the All-Star game. I think the dynamic of the matchup in the midfield with Almada one-on-one, and I'm going to talk to our directors. I hope we can ISO this during the telecast on Sunday as best we can. Jose Martinez, in my opinion, is the best 6 in the league. Thiago Almada, in my opinion, is the best pure playmaking midfielder in the league. People in New England might disagree with Carles Gil. Fine, they have that right. To me, it's still Thiago Almada. It creates a fantastic one-on-one matchup, and I'm very interested to see how that unfolds, because if Almada's on his A game, I think that changes the whole dynamic of what we could see on Sunday.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, he really hasn't been over the past 2 matches.
Fair enough.
Really,
yeah.
He had a really strong second half against DC the last time Atlanta United were at home. But, I mean, I feel like a lot of Atlanta United fans will be looking for him to hit that next year. I mean, he had a tremendous start to the season, of course. He's on 9 assists, tied with, I believe, Gazdag for the league. So Gazdag versus Almada is going to be another piece of the puzzle to look at. But I feel like, if Almada can present as that player that Atlanta United fans are used to, Atlanta could make things very interesting. But that's a big if, especially considering kind of the form he's in right now.
Well, Sydney, he set the bar pretty high right out of the gate, right?
No doubt,
Sydney,
no doubt.
I mean, you go back to that first week and understanding what happened and the manner in which he scored those goals, the manner in which Atlanta had its first big come-from-behind moment of the season. You guys would speak to this better than I can. It almost felt like, okay, here we are, and it's time for us in the Deep South to dream big again. The door is open for that, so the bar is set very high. What did disturb me in the game against the Red Bulls, which I watched, obviously, in my preparation for the game, when things weren't going right in the first half, it seems like he was retreating deeper and deeper to get the ball. So, look, I think this key to a game falls into the 100 percentile of every game that's ever been played on the face of the earth, because everybody wants to score the first goal. But for Philadelphia in particular, the numbers are terrific for them when they score first. I think it's 19 consecutive wins for them now when they score the first goal of any game. And Jim Curtin speaks to that when we speak with him about it very cleanly. What that does, it forces us to draw the other team out. They're chasing it, and then it's set up for our guys to carve them up, get a second, get a third, and then it's good night, Gracie, right? I think the first goal is very, very important for Atlanta. I think it would be something to set the tempo of the day with what I expect to be a fantastic crowd again on Sunday afternoon. I don't think I'll expect anything other for a long time. But again, if they could score first and if they could put Philadelphia on the back foot, I think that changes the course of a lot of things that we were talking about a few moments ago. Watch the game, guys. Don't be depressed about it.
You know, we try. We try. I'll be up there in the press box. Sydney will be in the press box. And it's funny, you know, as the home press related to, you know, Atlanta United, we're sitting up there and we're looking at Almada making runs, and then we're looking at Almada having to drop back deeper because, you know, of things that are really not in his control, right? And
right.
You want your number 10 playing as a number 10, not as a number 8 or a 6, and having to drop back to receive the ball. And
just take this back to Giakoumakis too, I think is an important part of the conversation. I mean, you guys referenced my history with the Red Bulls, right? And when I look at players I'm envious of, everybody's going to be so envious of Lionel Messi, or, you know, obviously there was envy with Zlatan when he was in the league. Giakoumakis is the example of a guy that I, as a New Yorker, envy Atlanta for, right? And I'll tell you why. I don't know how familiar you're with New York City, but there's a pocket of New York City, Astoria, Queens, which is the Greek capital of the Western Hemisphere. Okay?
I'm a Mets fan, so I know all about Astoria.
Everyone in Athens knows what Astoria, Queens is. You'd be surprised to know this, okay? You put that player in the New York setting, and he'd be the closest thing the team had to a local MLS star that's been accepted by New Yorkers than what we've had in a very long time. Because of his ethnic background, because of the kind of player he is. You put Giakoumakis on the Red Bulls, John Tolkien isn't sitting on 4 assists. He's probably got 10 or 11 by now. That big, tall, natural finisher who does not need service all that close to goal to unleash a powerful header and get a goal. And also, I think he can play in a pressing system if he ever had to do that. I think he defends very well. So you're looking at what I think is a special player and a potential game changer as well on any afternoon. And maybe Sunday is that day.
Do you feel like, because you mentioned the Almada, you know, Jose Martinez kind of matchup is one of the keys. Besides that, what are some other keys? And you mentioned the 6 and Atlanta playing out of the back. And we had this conversation a lot last week as well with the Red Bulls. Essentially, they're two competing different styles of play, like polar opposite, right? What other kind of matchups, or whether it's players or positions, what are you looking at for both teams?
How Philadelphia adjusts when Kai Wagner goes forward, and if they don't adjust properly, what kind of space that gives to Brooks Lennon on the right side and the service that he provides. I thought Lennon, the few times I've seen him play in person this year, had very strong matches. I think he's had a strong season. I like the confidence level that the man has. I had the opportunity to have an at-length chat with him a couple of months ago, probably by now, one of the games that Danny and I did. And I liked his attitude in terms of confidence that he was rising once again to the level of somebody who should consistently be considered for U.S. men's national team duty. Okay. I like that bravado. I think there's still some more work to do there, but if he finds space deep in Philadelphia's zone as a result of Kai Wagner, who will also look to find space on the opposite end of the field, then I think that could mean very big things for Atlanta and Giakoumakis in particular. That, to me, is a matchup to watch. Now, Philadelphia adjusts very well, and when a team plays the diamond, like Philadelphia is committed to, where are you vulnerable? You're vulnerable on the width of the field, right and left. So if this is going to be a day for Atlanta, I think Lennon becomes a very important part of the equation for this team.
They focused a lot today on that specifically. It was there. Brooks Lennon was actually one of the ones that spoke. And again, it's early in the week, so it's not super tactical stuff that you're watching, right? But it was very clear that that's going to be part of the game plan. They're going to want to pick on the wings. And you've got rotation out wide for Atlanta. Brooks Lennon obviously is kind of the steadfast guy. He's always there. He's your engine. Gutman on the other side, and Gutman, he's going to have an opportunity or two a match where he just kind of appears in the box and makes something happen. But I think the biggest curiosity is going to be, you don't have Etienne. He's out on Gold Cup. You have obviously Arujo was gone now, so it's back to Tyler Wolff and become a fan favorite recently. He's always been a loved guy here, but he's been on a run of form. Do you think he factors into that, or do you think it's more going to be those vertical runs that Lennon likes to make?
Probably more the latter. And what I said about Lennon, with that said, I mean, I kind of like where Tyler Wolff is at this point in the season. And I don't think they sacrifice much with him on the field, even though this is still a very young player who's finding his game. I think he's a serviceable player. But I also think he's going up against a team that will test whatever he has to deliver, because what I think Philadelphia does very well, in particular in that area of the field on the right side, for Atlanta, is the help that Jack Elliott will give on that side. And my gut, I don't know this, but my gut is that once again, Curtin will select Leon Flock instead of Jack McGlynn, because Flock is the stronger defensively of the players. So the help defense he gives in that area of the field is usually something that's very attentive and very good. This won't be easy for Atlanta. To take it back to my original point, I think they're going to have to play a very good game. And I think they have to take advantage of the fact that Bendick is in goal. I think one of the things that Philadelphia will be preaching all week, they've got one of the best free kick takers in MLS in recent years. It is our job, and this is on you, Jose Martinez, because you're always wanting to play on the edge. It's our job to make sure you're not giving those 19, 20, 25-yard free kicks to a guy who can slice you up on set pieces. So that'll be a focal point. And if Philadelphia has that discipline, I think that'll make it all the more harder for Atlanta this week.
You bring up Jim Curtin, and he is slowly becoming a villain here in Atlanta. Him and Heinze got into it a few years ago, and then an article in The Athletic, he makes a comment about Atlanta fans being, SEC type territory. People just go, it's not a true fan base. It's, people are just going there to party. Check their driver's license. They're probably not even from Atlanta. It's the little things that off the field that interest me in games sometimes, and he's slowly becoming more of a villain here. I'm interested to see how the fans treat him in this game here.
You want to know, Tommy? You want to know the interesting dynamic about all of that?
Sure.
You're not going to meet a nicer man. I mean, you're
really, because I hate the man right now.
You're really not. Yeah, I mean, he'll give you the shirt off his back, and just from a repertorial point of view, he'll give you all the time in the world if you ask him to help explain what we are about to watch. There's a funny story. I remember this was at the height of Almada mania earlier this year. This was when he was far and away the top talent in the league in the opening, 4 or 5 weeks in the season. But Gazdag was playing very well for Philadelphia. So I tried to get him going a little bit. And I tried to say, hey, Jim, is it possible that we're making a fuss out of the wrong attacking midfielder in MLS, that maybe it's a Hungarian guy and not an Argentine? And he said, stop right there. I'm in enough trouble with the Atlanta fans as it is. I'm not going there. So we kind of cut the conversation short. But to your point, I also think that kind of thing, it's kind of good for the league. I mean, I know we have stars, but where have the villains gone, right? I mean, where have all the aggravating forwards from the old days in San Jose, or Blanco, who would play that role from the old days of Chicago? So if he represents that to the city of Atlanta, I don't think that's the worst thing for Major League Soccer at all.
100%. You love villains. Like you especially like coaches, like you used to have back in the day, just so many ones that stood out and said, controversial things, and we don't have that as much. And then when you see Heinze and him getting into it, you're like, oh, what did he call him, a jerk? I think was that what?
I don't remember that.
I know Tyler knows. Maybe
he did or he didn't.
It starts with A. I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, but
okay. It was worse than a jerk. Okay.
Funny the perception that fans have of some coaches too, because again, I did Red Bulls all those years. The year that Atlanta won MLS Cup 2018, Red Bulls had their number in the regular season, as they have for most of the history. And I don't know if you remember the potential handshake at the end of the game with he and Chris Armas. Red Bulls really played a complete game. They ran them off the field. This was the last regular season game before the playoffs between the two. Red Bulls would win Supporters Shield. Atlanta would win MLS Cup. Armas wanted to just shake Tata Martino's hand after the game, and Tata just walked right past him and just was in no mood for it. So that left that kind of sour taste in the minds of Red Bulls fans. And then Tata, of course, lifts the trophy. How fun is it going to be to have him back in the league, by the way, perhaps as soon as next week, with the greatest player on the planet, with the man who's going to be pulling the strings for whatever else is part of that attack. I wanted to ask you guys this. September 16th, I know Inter Miami goes to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. To me, the dynamic of that game, I think that has the potential to be the most important regular season game in MLS this season, because the crowd obviously will be what it is. They're going to open up the upper deck. Yeah. But do they honor Josef Martinez properly for that game, assuming he's still on the team? And I believe he will be, because Martino will mandate that he finishes the season in Miami. What do you think?
I think so. And I also think, to add on to that, especially now that it's confirmed that Tata is coming back, I think it's both of them.
Yeah.
I think they have to.
Yeah. I mean, with Josef, I think that has to be the moment where he's still a tangible player in the league. And I think they're going to make every effort to continue with him as the striker on this team until that day just is no longer reality, because somebody comes in from outside the organization. I do know that Javier Morales, who's been the interim coach and is having a very tough time with that group right now, wants to stay away from two strikers. And the impression I got is that he'd rather play 70 minutes with Martinez and then maybe 20 with Campana. I don't know that any of that changes until a potential big striker is landed by Inter Miami from Europe in the coming weeks. And that might not be in this transfer window, by the way, either, guys.
Right. And Tata, I think on paper, a lot of things you would imagine that they would do down there in Miami are pretty easy to guess, right? I mean, Josef, he still is one of the best goal scorers in the league. You're now going to have Messi feeding him and helping him out. Who knows what that does for his confidence? But also, like, Tata is that mind that he could come in and just change things completely around. You know, that's what he did with Atlanta in terms of, going from the way that he started off 2018 to kind of his bread and butter in 2018, and then changed it up in the playoffs, going back to the Red Bulls series and kind of threw Red Bulls for a loop a little bit. So, I mean, he's got the mind to, I think, get the most out of those players.
The thing I can't wrap my head around yet, Tyler, but I think we'll get an answer in the first couple of games that Messi plays. Obviously, he's a fantastic talent, but how long does it take for people to recognize how to feed off that talent and make me a better player? Okay, there's going to be an adjustment, because they're playing with something that they've never experienced before. Busquets will know what's going on. Busquets knows how to read off his movement. Busquets will know what to expect. But there will be, for all the greatness of Lionel Messi, even at this stage of his life at 36, and I still think he's close to the top of the game, obviously not in the prime years anymore, but I think there's going to be an adjustment from whoever is on this team, Kremoski, Josef Martinez, Campana, David Ruiz in the midfield. It's going to take them a little bit to learn how to play with somebody who competes at that level. I don't think that's going to kick in right away. So that's why I think whatever Messi greatness we see is going to be individual greatness right away, and not necessarily making everyone around him better. He's proven everybody else wrong, so maybe he'll prove me wrong. First game, Cruz Azul on July 21st, right?
Yeah. I think it's one of those things too where it's, you know, like you're saying, the youth, maybe not so much youth, but lack of experience compared to playing at that level that he plays at. I think a lot of it, you just go back to that old adage of, hey, just give him the ball. Just get the ball to Messi and see what happens.
But there's more to it than just get out of the way, right? Yeah. You have to accentuate whatever, and they're going to work on that. They're going to talk on that, and I don't think Tata Martino will figure that out right away. I think there's a process. Look, I'm as excited as anybody to see these first 12 games for him before the season ends. Right. But I think realistically, a lot of this is about 2024.
No, I'd agree with that. I'd agree. Real quick, I don't know when you and Danny are getting into Atlanta, but is there anything you guys are looking to get into, looking to see when you're in town, or is it a quick trip for the two of you?
Yeah, it depends when we get in, right? I think this week we both get in on Saturday night. So you have to understand, like, I'm interested whenever I do a game on Sunday and not a Saturday. I like to immerse myself in that MLS 360 and a lot of the 7:30 games, because that's you made a good point earlier. Forgive me, I forget which of the three pointed, and that is the schedule. So I watch a ton of games every week, but I only watch select games live. It's generally one that I'm calling at 7:30, and then maybe I'll catch the late game. One of the 10:30 starts from start to finish. It'll be interesting to see whether they tweak the schedule at all moving forward at some point this season or certainly next season. But to answer your question, probably Saturday night, I'm settling in with a glass of wine, my Chipotle order, and I'm just going to watch with the laptop some of the 7:30 games from my hotel room in Atlanta. But we will get out and about before the season is done in Georgia. We've done it a little bit already in previous trips.